Good day, and welcome to your short little lecture on animated GIFs. What we're going to be doing here over the next few minutes is showing you how to use Adobe Photoshop to create an animated GIF. By the way, that's a hard G, as in like gin and ginger and George, not a soft G. It's not pronounced GIF. Well, you can pronounce it however you want, but its creator, Steve Wilhite, says, hard G. So what we're going to be doing is creating an animated GIF. Now, here's one thing that you need to understand. There are tons of animated GIFs out there. They violate all sorts of intellectual property rights. Here's a good example. I'll click on this one. That's Chuck Norris, Walker, Texas Ranger kind of thing. I don't really know. Could be, I don't know what show that is. No, I don't. Do not look forward to your letters. All right. But the thing is that there is no way the person that created that animated GIF legally was able to do it. Any sort of searches there, you see all sorts of stuff from South Park to illustrations to weird little things that would violate. NFL would sue you like crazy. Animated GIFs from A Christmas Story, because this is being recorded around the holiday season. Yeah, all sorts of intellectual property violations, and you are not allowed to do any of those. But we're going to show you how to, I am going to show you how to make an animated GIF by using Photoshop. If you have already made one in the past and you want to use any other piece of software, you are more than welcome to. The only thing that I am actually going to see, what you're going to turn in, is simply the animated GIF file. Now, here's a very, very important thing that you need to understand about animated GIFs. They are simply a single file that includes a sequence of pictures in it. There is no sound in an animated GIF. You cannot put sound in it. It's a very old format, and it also restricts the number of colors. You do not get millions of colors. You get like 256 colors. All right, that's all you get in a GIF. So you got to be careful about what you do. Also, with this assignment, again, as mentioned earlier, you are not allowed to violate any intellectual properties. You're going to have to do something that is your creation and your creation only. Here's a good example of one that I did over the holiday season. So this is a local company, and I helped them create their website originally, and they came back to me and they said, hey, we would like you to make some animated Christmas ornaments on our Christmas tree, and then we want you to put a little twinkling star at the very top. And I go, cool, I can do that. And I gave them a bid, and they said, sure, please do it for us. And so I did it for them. And so this is an example of an animated GIF. Why animated GIFs? Well, because they wanted this on email. And the thing about email is that you have to go very old school if you're going to send something over email, because you never know what somebody's email client or email system is going to be. So an animated GIF is the easiest way to do, well, an animation. Make sure that it's viewable on every platform. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get started. This particular lesson is going to be introduced to you using one of the Adobe Photoshop Creative Cloud tools, but you've got to understand that the process that I'm going to show you works way back in any wide ranges of Photoshop. CS5, CS6, old school series, and even some even older pieces of software that Adobe used to have, something called Image Ready. Yeah, don't use that. Okay, so what you're going to need to know is that what we're going to be looking at here is the window timeline. If you've never actually opened up the timeline down at the bottom of Photoshop, it's found under Window and it's found under Timeline. By the way, if you're using a CC, I already skipped the start screen. Actually, on my program, in case you're wondering, on my preferences, I actually always make sure that I turn off the start spaces, because I hate that start workspace. In case you're looking at this going like, you open up Photoshop and you think, whoa, that doesn't look like mine. So, window timeline, this is where we're going to need to be at. So you can see what an animated GIF looks like. I have opened up the Christmas tree that I made for the local company. This is their logo that they have, and this is their tree. And what you see below on the timeline is a sequence of files. Well, wait, they're not files. They're actually frames. How many? 107. Well, wait, doesn't that make a pretty big file? And the answer is no, not really. Those 107 frames down there, I'm going to put my cursor over the actual image. See if I get there. Put my cursor over the image, and there you go. The larger size image was 150 kilobytes. easily downloadable on even any sort of mobile device, even if you only got 1 or 2 bars. That's something that's pretty small, and I even shrunk it down even further when I exported it. So the process in doing this creation is that you have to understand that we're going to be using layers like crazy. In fact, I'm going to minimize everything that I got here and just concentrate on the layers. Now, how many layers do I have in existence? Well, I have 107 layers. Why do I have 107 layers? Well, allow me to show you what each of the layers do and how the timeline works. So in the timeline in Photoshop, every single picture is represented as part of the animation. In fact, if I click through it, you'll see that as I click on each of the picture, it's looking like the ornaments show up. Okay, and they do. But I want you to understand that, take a look at my layers over on the right hand side of the screen. I'm going to go back to layer 1. I'm going to click through them one more time. Now I want you to notice where the eyeballs are in the individual layers. Clicking on layer 2, you'll see that I have, well, trying to click on layer 2, you'll see that the eyeball turns on layer 2. Clicking on layer 3, you'll see the eyeball turns on layer 3. Clicking on layer 4, and so on. Every single time that I choose an individual frame of animation, you'll see that it's represented by an individual layer. Now, the thought is that what we're going to do is we're going to create a simple little animation, and each frame of that animation is going to correspond to a layer or a selection of layers. Just because the way that I did this specifically because I wasn't quite sure what they wanted, so I gave them a rough draft, and then they said, no, we want the ornaments to show up a different way. I didn't make the ornaments, by the way. I also didn't make the tree. The ornaments came from Pixabay. The tree came from, they had a logo contest that they did. The thing is that I didn't quite know how they wanted the animation to look, and so I just took and created a whole bunch of different animations. In fact, I'll show you all the different layers. There we go. And I could have easily just turned on the eyeballs one at a time. Now, actually, each of these layers is not just an ornament. It actually also has the tree. I probably could have just made them individual ornaments, yes, and had a background and left like layer 1 turned on. Absolutely. But the point here is that what we're going to do is we are going to represent every single layer of animation by an active layer or combination of layers inside Photoshop. So let's go ahead and let's build one all by ourselves. I'm going to go ahead and close this up, and we're going to say no because I already saved that. We'll do file and we'll do new. Now, how big does your animated GIF have to be? Well, that is actually something that's up to you. One thing you don't want to do is you don't want to make it print resolution. So we're going to definitely make sure that we want it to be 72 pixels per inch. I'm going to actually set this to be pixels. By the way, if this new document screen doesn't match up your screen, it's because I'm recording this in CC 2017. Why? Because I don't know. In my size here of pixels, what I'm thinking to myself is that a good size is not going to take over the screen, but it's also not going to be too totally small. I don't want to do all this work for a 200 by 200 pixel image. So better to start bigger, and then if you want to, when you export it out, you can shrink it down, right? But when you export out, you can't really make it enlarged. Otherwise, it looks all pixelated and stuff like that. So I'm going to go with an 800 pixel wide by 800 pixel tall image. And again, that's not something too totally big, not overtaking the picture. I definitely just want to make sure it's 72 dots per inch. I'm going to stick with a white background because I'm just going to do a quick little pencil drawing. So I'll go ahead and hit the create button. Now again, this is probably going to be way too big. I mean, you saw the animated GIFs in the example, and they're usually small. Sometimes you see them in advertisements on the side of a web page. Very seldom do they overtake a web page. But I'm going to start big, and then I will shrink it down on the export. What I'm going to do is I am going to take and stick with a white background. You're more than welcome to kind of put anything that you want in there. The idea is that you're going to need a minimum number of frames for this particular animation. That number of frames is listed in your assignment. Why? Because I may change it any single time I teach this. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to do a stick figure guy. I'm going to take and use the brush tool, and I'm going to draw just a small little head. I'm going to take and I'm going to draw a couple of legs and a couple of arms. And when I draw those couple of arms, that's going to be, there you go, that's my drawing. So what I want to do is I want to take and put this into an animated GIF. By the way, I am on purposely using a soft brush. I also am well aware that on purposely is not a real word. Yeah, we make stuff up. So whenever you are starting, what you are going to need to do is down on the timeline, there is a button that says Create Video Timeline. Do not click on that. That's not what you want. There's a small little pull down arrow just to the right of that, and I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to choose Create a Frame Animation, because that's what we're doing. We're not going to be editing video. And if you didn't know you could edit video in Photoshop, guess what? You can edit video in Photoshop. We're creating a frame animation. Go ahead and click that button. So when we create the frame animation, it will change that pull down menu. We still actually have to click on the button. I know it seems weird. What do you mean? See, this is like a menu. So you choose one, and then that opens up a button. You click on that, and that actually creates your frame by frame animation. Now here is where you're going to start collecting frames. You can do any kind of animation you wish. If you wanted to do a build, here's an example of a build. A build would be where I take and I add a frame of animation. Now, when I add a frame of animation, it's going to be utilizing this timeline, and it's going to be utilizing this small little button that is just to the left of the garbage can, and this is inserting a new frame. Now, what this does is if I click on this, it will add a frame of animation on the timeline, and over here on the layer, it does not change anything. Well, wait, I thought you said that every timeline here corresponds to layers. It doesn't automatically add the layers. You have to add the layers yourself. That way you can kind of control how many layers that you want. Oh, okay. So every frame, if the frame of animation is different, like if you want frame 2 to be different from frame 1, then what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to take and either draw another stick figure guy, okay, or girl, or add a new layer. In my case, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add a new layer, layer number 1, and I'm just going to draw some eyeballs. I know that's just one eyeball, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another frame of animation, and then I'm going to add another layer, and when I add that other layer, I'm going to draw a second eyeball. I know it's kind of swoopy down. Hey, I'm drawing with a mouse. I don't have my tablet handy, mostly because it's really hard to like record a lecture and draw with the tablet. I know. But the whole point here is I'm adding a frame of animation, and every time I add a frame of animation, I want it to look different. Now the thing is that I've been adding individual layers. So when I add that layer, I'm going to take and I'm going to add a smile right there. All right, and then I'm thinking to myself, okay, cool, so they're all going to look different. The answer is no, they're not, because notice all of the layers are turned on. So in frame 1, all the layers are turned on. Well, what do you want to do? Well, I don't want them all on. I only want layer 0 turned on. Then I go to frame 2 and I turn on layer 1. Okay, but notice back in frame 1, see, that's not turned on. In frame 2, layer number 1 is turned on. Oh, that's confusing. It gets more complicated. In my third frame, you'll notice that I only have layer 0 turned on. All right, so I turn the eyeball on layer 1. That's one eye. But I want this to illustrate the second eye. So I turn that on. And then I think to myself, does that affect the other frames? The answer is no, because back in frame 1, I only had the eyeball on layer 0. Frame 2, I only had the eyeball on layer 0 and layer 1. Frame 3, I only had the eyeball on, yeah. There you go, and you start to see, hopefully see the picture. So when I get to frame 4, I wanted to make sure that I included the eyeballs, both that I drew, and also the mouth that I drew. All right. Now, at any given time, when you got a sequence of images, you can click through them like so you can see your small little animation play. There's also VCR controls down there, and I can hit these little buttons, boom, and it'll play by so fast that it'll make your head scream. What? Why? Well, the default setting is something that you also have to take into account. What default setting? The amount of time that each frame gets held. You see, if we're doing regular animation, if we were doing video work, it'd be 30 frames in a second. If we were doing doing maybe some 3D animation, we might do 24 frames a second, or we might do 60 frames a second. Game animation, we might do 120 frames a second. All right. So animated GIFs, by default, they don't have a frame rate, because different computers will play them at different speeds, especially with downloads. You know, they might play one frame and then the next frame gets downloaded, the next frame gets downloaded. So what they have is they have something called the delay setting. By default, it's set to 0. I'm going to click on the little pull-down menu and you'll see that it's set for no delay. Okay, that's the 0. What I can do is I can set it to put a half-second delay between each individual frame. And I can click and I can set each individual frame to last a half a second before the next frame plays. And so you can control how slow an animated GIF plays. In the fact, what I've got here is these 4 frames are going to play at half-second delays for each one. And if I hit play, you'll actually see them be created. And then what will happen is that when it gets to the end, it stops. Now, how do you control what happens at the end? Well, what happens at the end is something called looping. And by default, Photoshop has the timeline set to only play through once. Now, this can completely be changed either here, you can use pull down menu, or when you export it, you can set it to loop. Very easy swap, and you'll see me set it to loop a little bit later on the export process. You might be thinking to yourself, okay, Martin, in that example that you showed us, you didn't have all the eyeballs on. You did it a little differently. Well, allow me to show you a slightly different option. Okay, so here is a different example. This is one that I did of the cat that resides in my house. It's a little animated GIF that I just did. Well, actually, I took a little break in between recording and went and shot some pictures of the cat and did this quick little image sequence right there. So we're going to show you how to do an image sequence. I put some words on it, and because the cat gets annoyed once in a while. So don't even think about touching me. I hope you step on a logo. Lego. Okay, not a logo. Well, that would be weird. Anyway, so how does that work? Well, what I have is I have a series of pictures that I took, and I already took and prepped them, and I'll show you that they, in fact, I'll go to extra large icons so you can see that they're just pictures of Kitty on a couch and then me bothering Kitty. And I already put the text on in Photoshop. That's something you should know how to do by now, and if you don't, well, you're in the wrong class. Anyway, so these pictures are all in sequential order. Notice they're number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to import in what's called a Photoshop stack and use that to make an image sequence animation out of frames fairly quickly. All right, well, let's show you how to do it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to keep my timeline down there. I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Scripts, and I'm going to choose one that says Load Files into Stack. Now this has been there for a very, very, very long time. In fact, here's Photoshop CS6. Okay, I know you just didn't see me change, but I'll show you that. There it is, right there. Load Files into Stack. Okay, let me go back to CC. All right, hope that didn't go by too fast for you. Let me do the scripts and load files into stack. All right, so loading a stack means that what we're going to be doing is we're going to take a whole bunch of different pictures, and it loads them all as individual layers into a single image, which is perfect for making an animated GIF, especially if it's an animated GIF that comes from a sequence of photographs and not one you draw, although you can do whatever you wish, okay, as long as if you draw one, it has a background. So I'm going to go ahead and just choose Browse. It's going to pop up. These are already set for my 9 pictures that I have. I just simply highlight them all, Control A or Command A if you're on a Mac, and I click OK. What it'll do is it will show you the individual stack. All right. Now here's one thing you do not want to do. Do not align these source images. Never. Do not create a smart object. Nope. Just make sure they're all in. And by the way, if you're skipping a number, that's absolutely okay. The important piece is that you want the early, actually you just kind of want them in some sort of semblance of order to help in your sanity. You can have them named whatever you want because you choose the eyeball that illustrates whatever frame you're on for whatever layer you want visible. All right, but putting them in order is not a requirement. It's just a suggestion. Now I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So when I load the files into the stack, what will happen is, depending upon the speed of your computer, it will load all the files at once, and it will put them in the order of the name. And you'll notice it starts in my layers, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on like that. And this is perfect for me because what I'm going to do is down here under Create Frame Animation, I'm going to click that little button. I don't have to use the pull down menu because it already is on frame. And that's going to be, there you go, frame number 1. And I'm going to set I don't want the delay to be too slow, but I don't want it to be too fast. So I'm going to do a 1/10 of a second delay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up and I'm going to say New. And now you might think to yourself, could you right click and get rid of. Yeah, you got the ability to dispose, but pretty much could. I just want to just let you know that if you ever right click, there's a little menu there. So I'm going to hit the new button, and the fun thing about it is if you have a delay, it will copy the delay. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So frame number 2, I don't want to see picture number 6, I want to see picture number 7. Now you also think to yourself, wait, what are all those those eyeballs? Well, the only thing that matters is that the fact that I'm seeing the next picture. You could turn them all off, you turn them all on, doesn't really matter. I'm going to leave them all on because they're not going to make any difference. Not when I export. It doesn't make my file size any bigger, not at all. What I'm going to do is, again, continue on and turn off. And now I can double check that I definitely have picture 1, frame 2, frame 3, get a little close. Yeah, I had the automatic light set where I should not have. That changed the lighting a little bit right there. But let me go ahead and just continue. So this is the 4th frame. This is the 5th frame. I'm adding a frame and I'm altering which layers are visible. See how if it's in order, it makes life a lot easier. Okay, you don't have to guess. You're not trying to dig in to see what the icons are looking like. You just simply go kind of in order by adding the frame. And then I'm thinking to myself, though, wait a sec. People need to be able to read this one. Okay, so I'm going to go back to there's frame 6, and I'm thinking, I want that to be delayed by half a second. Now I did mention the fact that I think I mentioned earlier delayed before or after. The delay is actually before it continues on, so that's more like a hold. It'll hold that frame for like half a second, and then I'm going to get frame 7, okay, and there's frame 7, and then I want that to hold for half a second. Okay, and then when I get to frame 8, I didn't turn the eyeball off, but I definitely want that to hold. I want that to hold for like a whole second because that's got more text, so people got to be able to read it. And then when I get to the very last frame, the 9th frame that I have, I'll turn off the eyeball, and this one I want to sit for a little while. I want this to hold for like 10 seconds. And I'm still going to set it to loop. And you do have the pull down menu. You can set this to, I'm going to have loop forever. Make sure that you do that. And I can hit play and see what it looks like. And quick, fast, don't even think about touching me. Boom, I hope you step on a logo. And that goes pretty not logo. Wow, that goes by pretty fast. All right, so let's talk about the very last thing, and that's exporting. When you get ready to export, let me hit stop here. It is going to be file, and depending upon what version, it could be save for web if you're on an older version, or it could be the whole save for web legacy. You want to go for this, the save for web legacy, because you got to make sure that you set this for GIF. Okay, if it's not set for GIF, you're in a world of hurt. It will automatically be animated, but you are probably going to have to alter the picture size. The first example that I had, which was 800 by 800 is still kind of too big. So I'm going to reduce this down to 400 pixels wide, and I don't worry about the height or anything like that. I'm just going to say 400 pixels wide. That's a pretty good number for me. I could go a little bit bigger, but it also tells me that I'm using photographs, and so now take a look. 530K, that's about half a meg. That on a download for a phone actually could suck up some data. And if somebody's got a slow connection, not going to download right away. That's when I was mentioning earlier that sometimes an animated GIF doesn't play what you think it's going to play, because sometimes it'll show the first frame, then download the second frame, and so like that. So if somebody's on a slow connection, especially if it's a mobile connection, yeah, not going to play smoothly. But after it gets downloaded, then it will play smoothly. But that's pretty large. Okay, can I reduce that file size down? That 500, this is at 530K. The answer is not really with a picture. You know, you want to do an animated GIF. If you do one that's an illustration, you can get a really nice small one. But the only way you can reduce this down is by reducing down the number of colors. If I take the number of colors and I say, okay, instead of having 256 colors, let's try 128. And if I turn the color number to 128, it slows way the heck down. Or not slows, it gets smaller. And if I turn the color down even farther to 64 colors, then it gets 322. It's almost in half. Here's one thing you don't want to do. You don't want to get into 8 color, 8-bit, just only 8 colors. Then you start getting something that looks very much like old school computer, stuff from the 90s. Don't sacrifice that. I'm going to just tell you that for this assignment, stick with 256. It still limits the number of colors, and you'll get that weird dithering going on. That's what happens with a GIF, especially with photographs. But at least you'll be able to take and play your animation. Okay, now if you play the animation in here and it does not play, because maybe it thinks that you're trying to type in some numbers, you may just give it a moment. It will finally finally get around to playing. Okay, it doesn't play perfectly in here, but this is where you can change your mind on the looping if you want to. You don't have that 3-time option. It does have an other, but for right now, your assignment is going to be to set it for forever. And when you go and you hit the save, I already have the kitty saved. I guess I could call this kitty 2. It's a good idea to make sure that you do either open it in a browser or open it in a viewer that will support animated GIFs. Not all viewers. I mean, it depends on your computer. If you double click it and it doesn't play, that's not a good thing. All right, that's when you drag it over into a browser. And pretty much that is going to end the assignment. I'll tell you that this is an old school method. You may never ever do this in your entire life, or you might go, oh, I want to make about 1,000,001 animated GIFs. But yeah, at this point, have fun on your project.